Hey Spaceman, how's the moon?
So Tom MacDonald dropped 2 projects this year, and because the concept of taking care of your well-being is completely foreign to me, I bought both of them. I now currently own 3 signed Tom MacDonald albums, and I feel no shame. And as you might have guessed, 2 projects equals 2 videos. On one hand, we have his mixtape, Flowers for the Dead, and on the other, his follow-up to the previous Ghost Stories album that I reviewed, Gravestones. In this shorter video, I'm gonna be covering Flowers for the Dead, aka Tom MacDonald's slightly better album than the awful one that he dropped with it. I really hope that doesn't spoil the tone of my much longer, full-length Gravestones review. This video is like the prelude to that one. It's the calm before the storm right here. That's an awfully hot review he dropped. Can I strike it down? Probably not. If you want to hear more about that copyright strike attempt, I'll talk about that a little bit more in my Gravestones video. Hold up. Wait a minute. Let me put a sponsor in it. Today's video is sponsored by YouGov. Put simply, YouGov is an easy way to make extra cash just by sharing your opinion. Through either their website or their mobile app, you can take online surveys focused on things like products, politics, and brands, and you earn points for completing these surveys that can eventually be converted into cash rewards. And there is nothing better than chasing a little extra bag on the side. I've been using it myself, and I'm gonna save up the cash to buy the next Tom MacDonald album when the time comes. And I'm sure a lot of you guys will want to do the same. So click the link that's down in the description to start earning your extra cash with YouGov. Much love to YouGov for sponsoring today's video. I'll talk about that a little bit more in my Gravestones video, but for now, let's talk about
I'd spit the facts. Not everyone is evil, but the world's gone mad.
So, about that video title, don't overestimate how much I enjoy this project. It is slightly better than Gravestones, but it is worse than Ghost Stories. Yes, Ghost Stories, the Tom MacDonald album, which I made a 47-minute long video on to review and make fun of, is the best Tom MacDonald project that I have heard. Ghost Stories actually had some songs where I almost entirely praised everything in those songs. Whereas with Flowers for the Dead, every positive that I have to say about this project, pretty much every positive, can actually be flipped into a reason as to why it's not that much of a good thing. For example, I Don't Drink is a fairly good sounding song and it's pretty catchy. However, the reason that it sounds good and it's pretty catchy is because, well, it doesn't sound like Tom.
Blacked out, got arrested by the cops. Woke up on the neighbor's front lawn. Every time that I'm hungover, I convince myself I'm dying. I'm pretty sure that last night went down in history. We made it out alive and that's a victory.
Okay, Just World MacDonald, Prior Malone. If we're talking about something that applies to more than just one song, some of the production sounds nice. However, the more that I listen to Tom MacDonald's music, the more that his instrumentals just feel like simple, basic, barely edited preset loops with a drum beat thrown over them. And that is an issue on Tom's end because Tom produces all of his own music, which I do still respect, but his production style throughout this whole mixtape is pretty basic. And sometimes, they sound like he's trying to do the soundtrack for Angry Birds. Why have 2 of my most recent videos referenced Angry Birds? That's way too much. But I mean literally, just listen to this, am I wrong? Now let me make it clear here that I'm not a producer myself, and I don't know if this is definitely what he is doing. I'm not experienced enough with making instrumentals to know for sure, but what it sounds like to me as a listener, it just sounds like he's taking loops and just throwing them into his songs and using that as the main melody. And that's not good. And I know a lot of producers do use loops in their production. It's a very common tool to use, and it can be very helpful. It can make some great instrumentals. A skilled producer can alter and incorporate them in a way that you don't even really notice or care about the fact that a preset loop is being used. With Tom, I just feel like it was so noticeable. And hey, if he made all of these melodies, if he played them on his keyboard, then that's fine. I'll take that point back. But the way they sound is just so simple that that's the first thing my mind jumps to. Let me just play the start of some songs for you and you guys can tell me what you think, because on pretty much every song, they just start off with the main melody of the song. Like I said, maybe I'm wrong, but if you're a producer watching this, let me know down in the comments below if you recognized any of those loops. When it comes to Tom as a rapper, I could say that songs like Disgusting and Conspiracy Theorist have pretty dense rhyme schemes. But they're dense in the way that it sounds like he just wrote the verse with rhyme zone open in front of him and tied the words together in a way that sure does kind of make sense but means absolutely fucking nothing. Download porn while I'm aboard a boat that's in an ocean storm. Like, what are you saying, Tom? It's the type of lyrical spiritual rapping about killing people and being wow so crazy that Eminem did earlier in his career and gets made fun of for now. And that is not a shot from me at Eminem. It actually worked when he did it 20 years ago very skillfully on the Slim Shady LP. Much less so when it's now outdated and done by a less gifted songwriter. Oh no, did I compare him to Eminem? Tom wouldn't like that.
Stop comparing me to Hobson Token NF and M.
I'll stop comparing you to them when you stop sounding like them. Tom MacDonald is to 2020 what Hobson was to 2012, but worse. It's also worth mentioning the song on this album called Fuck the Industry, which is, for the most part, lyrically identical to a song that Tom dropped on the Gravestones album that he dropped with this mixtape, and that song was called The Music Industry. A different beat in chorus, but nearly identical verses. It just seems so unnecessary and lazy. And, in case you were wondering, yes, the awful hooks are back for this album, ladies and gentlemen. And he really saved some of the worst ones for this project.
Me and my fans, we don't care what anybody say. Middle fingers to whoever in the way, man. Me and my fans. Me and my fans, we the hangover gang. Gang, 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 gang. I can't sleep out of my head. I'm going in my mind and no one understands. Whoa, I think my life sucks. I think my life sucks. Move out the way.
Oh, they're just great. So yeah, it's still a bad album as you can tell, but it does have more redeemable qualities than Gravestones. Just like one or two more. The main thing that makes this a bit of a better project for me is the more personal songs. Goodtimes, I Don't Drink, Authority Problems, the verses on the song I Can't Sleep, because I played the chorus for you there. The chorus isn't great, but the verses are pretty good, and the song Spaceman. All these tracks are mostly focused on Tom talking about himself, talking about his past with being a reckless drinker and partier, and how at the time he saw them as good times and he enjoyed himself during them, but he's happy that he's past those times now, and he's in a much happier place. And him talking about his difficulties with mental health, and how you can feel really disconnected from family and friends when you're a rapper, and how that can kind of really distance you from people. These are fairly good songs that cover those topics. There's less to laugh at with these tracks because it's less of the Tom MacDonald persona, and he's not purposely trying to be controversial or to offend people, and songs like this are surprisingly alright. Now, I mainly listen to Tom MacDonald albums to laugh at how bad they are, so I wasn't super entertained by these songs, but parts of them were fairly nice. The most enjoyable tracks on here are the ones that I just mentioned, with Spaceman probably being my favourite. That's a song where the production is simple but very nice, the content is personal, and it actually has a good chorus too. And surprisingly, even some of the tracks that sound like they should be hilariously awful, like Coronavirus, actually make pretty agreeable points all throughout and aren't nearly as clown-worthy as you would think. Then there's stuff like Cloned Rappers, which is exactly as clown-worthy as you would think. I know this is the more positive segment of this meme album review, but I just had to mention that song. Also, I want to mention that I Don't Care is a track that actually goes pretty hard, to be honest. Tom's flows with the dramatic building instrumental actually hits very nicely, and the chorus on that one, actually good, because it's pretty catchy and doesn't sound like he's trying too hard to sing.
Everybody says I changed up, cause I had nothing and I came up, whoa, oh, hey, yo, everything you say, bro, I don't care, no, I don't care, bro.
One of the better choruses that he's done. And just to talk real quick about the overall project, I see why Tom called this one a mixtape, because the stuff that he talks about doesn't really remain super consistent throughout. You get like a mix of massive ego Tom and personal Tom on here. It kind of switches between those two really without warning, so there's not much to say about the mixtape's theme or how it connects as a project. It's a compilation of Tom MacDonald songs, so I really don't have much else to say about it outside of that. To sum it up, this project has more bad tracks than good ones, and more flaws than strengths. But it's got nothing on gravestones. But that is a discussion for another, lengthier, track-by-track review. So, if you're ready for that video, of course subscribe if you haven't done so already, turn on those notifications, and stay tuned for I Bought Tom MacDonald's new album So You Don't Have To, Part 2.
Everybody says I changed up, cause I had nothing